So I wanted to do a one-off video that talks about the concept of palette swapping. You've probably heard of it, but if you're new to programming, you might be wondering what its relevance is. And there's really two main reasons why palette swapping is used. So basically, it's when you have an item or an enemy, or you have a texture if you're doing a 3D game, and you change the overall colors that are being used, which saves you from having to redraw the enemy all over again. So in the old days when memory was at a premium, palette swapping was essential so that you did not exceed those memory limitations. But it also serves the purpose of saving development time. Because say you decide you're going to have 75 enemies, okay? It takes a lot less time to draw, say, 25 enemies and then just do a palette swap of the color of each one and do that 3 times, and so now you have 75 enemies. Now, when you're palette swapping, you got to be really careful that you don't overdo it because it becomes really obvious at a certain point. So it's one thing to have 1 or 2 variations, which can be interesting. When we start having 5, 6, 7, 8 variations, then it becomes a problem. So let's take a look at the basics. So let's bring in our objects. We just drag and drop them in. Now if you notice, they're all shades of gray. That is not accidental. Because what you're actually doing is you're not designating a single color for the whole object. What you're really designating is a color filter. In other words, take this color and filter it by the color that I want it to be mixed with. So let's see how this works. So we'll drag this in, we'll copy it and paste it, and we'll paste it again. Okay. Now, whenever you have a sprite, you'll see over here for the object in the inspector that there's a color option. If you click on this and then you choose a color, and we just need to move it, you can see that that one is now red. Now, if we run this, you can see it's not just one color red. You have a lighter red here, slightly darker here, more dark on this side. And that's because when I drew the object, I had that in mind. So I used a lighter gray here, slightly darker gray here, and more dark gray here. And so that's what you're really doing. You're drawing it in shades of gray, and then you're filtering it through the designated color. There could possibly be other ways to do it. I'm not saying that this is the only way, but it's the way that I do it. So let's do this again. Let's take another one. And this time, we'll choose like a blue. And let's do something else. Let's take all of these and make them slightly bigger, just so it's a little bit more evident. There we go. So now we'll take our third gem, and let's make this one, I guess, green. So maybe you're playing a game where there's different currency, and the currency are gems, and each gem has a different value. Well, you only had to draw this once, and yet now you have 3 types just by designating a different color to filter them through. So when you think about your development time, which would have been harder? Redrawing this all over again, or simply filtering it through another color? So let's take another example, like maybe a potion. So maybe you have health potions, MP potions, strength potions. Same idea. And actually, let's make these a little bit bigger too. And this one, maybe we want it to be like a pinkish or purple potion. This one we want it to be, maybe it's black for some reason. Maybe it's actually not a potion. Maybe it's some kind of incendiary fluid, that it's oil, petrol, whatever. And maybe this one is kind of like a light green. So you basically had to draw just one gem and one pot, and then with color swapping, you can come up with a range of them. Now this is also possible with enemies. So let's create a new object. Call it enemy. And now let's create an animation sequence. And take those frames, drag and drop them up here. And this isn't meant to be a tutorial for animation. That in itself is really its own. This is, as I mentioned, is really more about palette swapping. But the benefits of using palette swapping on enemies, particularly when they're animated, it's a far bigger benefit than a still object, which is a single frame, because with enemies, like this one alone, has 12 frames. So rather than having to repaint 12 frames, you only have to choose one color. Okay. So there it is. A little slow. Let's just speed that up a little. I think we have an extra frame at the end here. That can be deleted. Okay. So now, you don't have to change the color of each and every frame. What you do is you just select the enemy. Again, you have color. And let's choose blue. So maybe at the beginning of the game, you have a blue slime. And as you can see, every single frame got changed. You didn't have to redraw each and every frame. So while it's nice for these static items, it's huge for animated items. And let's now copy that one. And you don't have to redo the animation or anything. You just designate a different color. Maybe this one's going to be like a green slime. Just slide him over a little bit. And now we'll copy him. And you can see the implications for almost any type of game. Not just, maybe an RPG, but like the principle is also the same for MMOs, although with the case, say it's a 3D MMO, then you're really doing a palette swap on the texture as opposed to just the base color itself, but the overall principle is the same, whereas you're not redrawing the enemy, you're just given a different color. So just like that, rather than having to redraw the enemy, I now have 3 different enemies. So maybe this one you fight at level 1, this one you fight at level 20, this one you fight at level 40, whatever. You just have to be careful to not overdo it. If you use too much palette swapping, it really becomes obvious. But a little bit of palette swapping is probably necessary. And this concept can be expanded to visual effects too, specifically particle systems. So let's quickly make a particle system. As I mentioned earlier, this isn't meant to be a tutorial for these individual concepts, just the idea of palette swapping. But again, it takes a lot of effort to make a visual effect, so if you can recycle it, that's great. So I'm just going to quickly jump ahead with a few of these settings. Okay, so not bad for a really quick effect. So let's take this, and it's just meant to be like a burst, an explosion. Maybe it's for impact, or maybe if you're playing a turn-based game, when an enemy gets defeated, it has a burst at the end. Okay, so what we'll do, this one will start, it's red. This one will start green, and this one would be purple. So again, you made one effect, but now you can recycle it. So maybe this is a fire attack. Actually, let's move these so they're not overlapping other things. So maybe one is a fire attack, maybe one is a heal, maybe one is a poison. So again, recycling effects. Or maybe you have fireworks and you have a fireworks display. Well, why create a whole bunch of different ones when you can use the same particle system just with a different color? So that should basically wrap up this concept of palette swapping. So you can use it for static images, you can use it for enemies, for animations, you can use it for particle systems, and again, memory requirements, memory restrictions really aren't an issue anymore. It's really about saving development time.